Chapter 12. A few minutes before the weapon skills exam was about to be held in the target room, Cammy Cheesewell met Beef Hardy out in the corridor. Cammy's voice hadn't returned. She was still croaking like a bullfrog. Beef had the worst cold of his life. As they tried to plot their next strategy, their conversation sounded something like this. Croak, croak, croak. Achoo. Croak, croak. Dub, blub, blub, achoo. Croak. Croak, croak. Croak. Achoo. Blub, blub, dub, blub. Sniff, sniff. Croak. Sniff, 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 sniff. Blub, blub. Croak, croak. I don't know. Croak, croak, croak. Achoo. Croak, croak. Please cover your nose. Achoo. Not with my uniform sleeve. Sorry. Beef apologized. I think I have a temperature. He moaned. It feels like at least 106. Is that a record? Cammy croaked. Oh, Beef. I'm so proud of you. I knew you could get better than 100 if you tried. He sneezed in reply, grabbing her uniform sleeve as a handkerchief. Are you okay, Cammy? You look as bad as I feel. Thank you, she said uncertainly. She croaked a further reply, but Beef couldn't understand a word of it. Well, this isn't the time to think about ourselves, Beef said, turning serious. He wanted to salute, but he knew it would only make him sneeze. The weapon skills exam is about to begin, Cammy said, taking a few steps back and holding her sleeves behind her in case he did sneeze again. What are we going to do to make sure the space cadets flunk? No problem, Beef said. He leaned close so he could whisper confidentially and sneezed into her ear. He's so adorable when he sneezes like that, Cammy thought, vigorously shaking her head. I've taken care of everything, Beef whispered. How? She croaked. Well, first I checked the exam list. Hunk and his 3 buddies are scheduled to go first for target practice. You and I are scheduled to shoot right after them. Cammy croaked a reply. Beef had no idea what she had said, so he continued explaining his plan. So, since they're going first, I fixed their phaser guns for them. You what? Cammy asked. I have a friend in the weapons supply room. He and I go outside and shoot innocent creatures sometimes on weekends. That's nice, Cammy said. He gave me a key, and I sneaked into the gun supply room late last night. I found the 4 phaser guns that will be used for the exam this morning, and I put a little explosive charge in each. You mean? I mean when the 4 morons fire their phaser guns, the guns will blow their heads off, Beef said, his nose dripping into the broad smile that had formed on his feverishly red face. And they'll automatically flunk the exam. Brilliant, Cammy exclaimed. Achoo, Beef replied. Croak, croak, croak. Sniff, sniff, sniff. Croak, croak. Herb, excuse me. And as they carry the space cadets off in disgrace, Beef said, grinning, you and I will take up our weapons and show the examiner how real cadets shoot. Brilliant, Cammy repeated. But are you sure it's necessary to kill them to make sure they flunk the exam? I didn't say it would kill them, Beef replied impatiently. Killing them is against Regulation 1-A. I just said it would blow their heads off. Huh? Cammy croaked. If blowing their heads off results in their accidental death, that's not against regulations, right? I see, said Cammy admiringly. You're so smart. You really do know your regulations. Not knowing your regulations is against regulations, said Beef earnestly. Then, arm in arm, sneezing and croaking, they opened the door and entered the target room. The long, low room was already filled with cadets. They stood in clusters at one end, staring down the narrow target aisles at the human-looking cardboard cutout targets at the other end. "Attention!" cried the familiar voice of Lieutenant Barney Broadside, the weapons instructor. It was a standard cadet joke that Barney Broadside couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. Actually, Broadside was nearly as big as a barn and tremendously muscular, so no one had ever dared make that joke to his face. The cadets eagerly snapped to attention. Broadside lifted a basket containing the 4 phaser guns to be used in the exam. "I hope you all brought your shooting eyes today," he bellowed. "You need a perfect score to pass my exam." The instructor called up Hunk, Rip, Andy, and Shaky to go first. They stepped up smartly to the front of the room, formed a line, and stood at rigid attention as Broadside paced back and forth, inspecting them. Beef glanced knowingly at Cammy beside him. He couldn't wait for those 4 morons to pull the triggers. He couldn't wait to see the guns blow their heads off. He couldn't wait to see them carried from the target room in disgrace. And he couldn't wait to sneeze. "Achoo!" Lieutenant Broadside spun angrily around. "One more outburst like that, and I'll flunk the entire squadron," he screamed. Beef took a deep breath and held it. "Don't blow it," Cammy whispered. "My nose? No. Don't blow the plan." "Oh." Lieutenant Broadside was standing in front of the 4 space cadets, looking them over. "Rip, you're out of uniform," Broadside said sternly. "I know, sir. I need a sock," Rip replied. "You need a sock?" Andy asked. He stepped forward and socked Rip in the stomach. "Hey!" Rip cried. He socked Andy in the shoulder. Then Hunk socked Rip. Then Rip socked Shaky. Shaky socked himself. Hunk socked Rip. Shaky socked himself again. Andy socked Rip. And Rip socked Andy and Hunk. Beef and Cammy watched the whole sordid episode gleefully. "This is great," thought Beef. "Out! Get out!" Broadside was bellowing at the top of his enormous lungs. "Get out of the target room. All 4 of you flunk." "Huh? We flunk?" Hunk asked, holding off Andy, who wanted to do some more socking. "Yes. You flunk," Broadside said, pointing to the door. "After this idiotic display, I'd have to be crazy to put a gun in your hands. So you flunk. Get out of here now." "This is great," thought Beef. The 4 space cadets glumly slumped out of the target room. "Great, great, great. Next," called Lieutenant Broadside. Cadets Beef Hardy and Camembert Cheesewell. He held up the pistols as Cammy and Beef stepped to the front. "This is not so great," thought Beef. The guns hadn't been touched. That meant they were still set to explode when the trigger was pulled. Cammy looked at Beef. Beef looked at Cammy. Broadside handed them each a phaser pistol. "You two are my best target shooters," he said. "Show them all how it's done." Cammy looked at her gun. Beef looked at his gun. Cammy raised her gun toward the target. Beef raised his gun toward the target. "Fire at will," said Broadside. "Who's Will?" Rip called from the side. "I told you guys to get out of here." Broadside bellowed. Rip obediently lumbered out of the room. Cammy looked at her gun, then at Beef. Beef stared back at her. "We can't," Beef told Lieutenant Broadside, lowering the phaser gun. "We can't," Cammy agreed. "What do you mean you can't?" Broadside bellowed. "We just can't," Beef said. Cammy croaked the same words. Beef sneezed loudly. "Get out of here," Broadside ordered. "You flunked too. Maybe we could come back to this part of the exam later?" Cammy asked softly. "Yeah. We'll take our turn after the next 4 cadets." Beef suggested eagerly. "Out," Broadside bellowed. "You flunked." Cammy and Beef sadly handed back the phaser guns. Broadside called up the next 4 cadets and ordered them to begin shooting. Beef sneezed. "My temperature must be at least 108. He thought miserably. "The highest score I've gotten all week." The 4 phaser guns exploded loudly as Beef and Cammy glumly made their way through the exit. They didn't even turn around to see who had been blown up.